welcome to a new edition of your weekly program Arab Affairs here on Nile TV. I am Nancy Sarah filling in for my colleague Monam Silhi. Today our topic of discussion centers around the crisis in Syria's Aleppo. Displaced families returned home and schools reopened in the rebel-held city and districts today after a temporary truce was extended for 72 hours in the battleground North City. Residents trickled back into eastern areas of Aleppo, encouraged by a halt in the deadly violence that hit last month. More than 300 civilians were killed in 2 weeks of fighting in the divided city before the truce took place on Thursday, with regime airstrikes on its opposition-held east and rebel shelling on its regime-controlled west. The international community hopes that a drop in fighting can revive faltering peace talks to end a 5-year civil war that has claimed the lives of more than 270,000 people and displaced millions. Just how does my guest evaluate the tragic situation in Syria? Will the ceasefire hold? What can the next step be for a longer-lasting peace, perhaps, in the country? That's what we're going to be discussing later on in the program. But as always, we start off with a look at the top stories.
The Israeli forces and Hamas fighters clashed directly for the first time since the devastating 2014 war. Clashes between Palestinian fighters and Israeli forces were continuing east of Rafah in the southern Gaza Strip. Hamas wing the Izz ad-Din al-Qassam brigades accused Israel forces of encroaching into Gazan territory and said it was ready to respond. The flare-up in violence has raised concerns over the fate of a ceasefire between Israel and Hamas that has held since the 50-day war left over 2,251 Palestinians. Foreign Minister Sameh Shoukry held a phone call with his Russian counterpart Sergei Lavrov on Thursday. During their telephone conversation, the two top diplomats discussed the current situation in Syria and efforts to exerted by the international community to resume talks, negotiations, and renounce violence and ceasefire violations. The talks come within the framework of Egypt's presidency to the UN Security Council meetings that focus on Syria's consolidation. The United States and its allies have conducted 18 strikes against terrorist Daesh in Iraq and Syria. The coalition leading the operations said in a statement released on Thursday that 3 strikes near Mara in Syria hit a logistic facility, a vehicle-borne in province explosive device facility, and an ammunition storage center. The Combined Joint Task Force said in its statement that 15 strikes near 7 Iraqi cities hit tactical units and a weapons facility and destroyed tunnel entrances, rocket rolls, and weapons cache and multiple fighting positions, among other targets. The head of the Yemeni government delegation at troubled peace talks in Kuwait demanded action from UN mediators over rebel shelling of besieged third city Taiz. Yemeni foreign minister said the artillery fire by rebels was contravention of undertaking they have given when face-to-face negotiations resumed following a 3-day walkout by his team. He accused the rebels and their allies in renegade army units still loyal to ousted President Ali Abdullah Saleh of attacks on civilians in Taiz. Meanwhile, the Qaeda militants began to pull out of 2 southern Yemeni towns following weeks of mediation by tribesmen further to exit peacefully.
Welcome back, everyone. And before we start our in-studio discussion, let's take a look at the following report highlighting the latest happening in Syria. Just to remind you that a Russian military official said on Friday that no Russian or any other aircraft made flights over the camp in Sarmada, home of about 2,000 internally displaced people who fled the fighting from the surrounding Aleppo and Hama provinces over the past year. Here's a closer look.
Rebels seized a village from government forces near Aleppo, gaining important ground near the Syrian city, where the United States and Russia are trying to de-escalate the war. The Syrian Observatory for Human Rights said 73 people had been killed in the battle for Khan Tuman, some 15 kilometers southwest of Aleppo, in location near the Damascus-Aleppo highway. While multiple rebel sources said it has been captured, a Syrian army source denied Khan Tuman had fallen. The attack was launched by an alliance of insurgents known as Jaish al-Fath, including the Al-Qaeda-linked Nusra Front, which has rejected diplomatic efforts to hold the war and promote peace talks. The United States and Russia this week brokered a ceasefire in the city of Aleppo itself, where some 300 people have been killed in the last 2 weeks in government and rebel-held areas as a result of airstrikes and shelling. The observatory said 43 of the dead were rebels and 30 were government forces. Groups fighting under the banner of the Free Syrian Army, which have mostly supported diplomatic efforts in Syria, were not taking part in the attack. Meanwhile, the Syrian military denied that its warplanes had conducted airstrikes targeting a camp for displaced people near the Turkish border on Thursday, which killed at least 28 people. The Britain-based Syrian Observatory for Human Rights said it was not clear who carried out the strikes on the camp in Samada in the northern Idlib province near the Turkish border. The camp is home to hundreds of people who have fled from the surrounding Aleppo and Hama provinces. The attack in the central province of Homs came hours after a truce brought relative calm to the northern city of Aleppo, which has been the center of violence in recent weeks. Syrian President Bashar al-Assad said in remarks that came in the form of a letter to the Russian president that Aleppo would eventually be victorious.
Be the first to know. The news live at the site of the event. Information on events as they are happening. If it's breaking news, it's Nile TV. For ads on Nile TV, Egyptian Radio and Television Union, the economic sector, info@nileinternational.net or call us on the following numbers. Have you got a good story? Get in touch with Nile TV. Send us your videos, pictures, and stories. Email us on our website. Contact us on Facebook. Follow us on Twitter. And also Google+. Be part of making the news. Only on Nile TV International.
Our dear viewers, you can watch Nile TV International on the following frequencies. On the American satellite Galaxy 19 with an orbital orientation of 97 degrees to the west and a frequency of 12.028 GHz. You can also watch Nile TV in the Middle East and the Arab world on the Egyptian satellite Nilesat 201 with an orbital orientation of 7 degrees to the west and a frequency of 11.766 GHz. You can watch Nile TV International in the international satellite Intelsat 905 with the orbital orientation of 24.5 degrees to the west and a frequency of 3.688 GHz. You can watch Egyptian satellite Nilesat 102 with an orbital orientation of 7 degrees to the west and a frequency of 12.054 GHz.
Welcome back, everyone. And joining me for this afternoon's discussion is Dr. Sharif Al-Dimagdash, political analyst. Thank you very much for coming in.
Thank you.
And let me start off by asking you how you see the total situation of what's happening in Syria today.
Well, I see the situation in Syria that there is what we call a determination from the two superpowers, which are the United States of America and Russia. They are determined to put an end to this struggle, which lasted for 5 years. It was and it was very, strong fight for 5 years, and the victims the cost was very high. All the players on the ground, from my own point of view, they are not influential as we may think.
Right.
They receive orders. They depend on support, military support, logistic support, political support, financial support on the supreme power. So when there is what we call it political will to stop it, it will stop. I think the Americans and the Russians have reached a certain agreement. We don't know yet the full details of this agreement, but personally I had the impression that they have reached an agreement.
Right.
What we are witnessing, actually, this is the political games of which preceded any agreement. Each side is trying to optimize its gains before sitting on the table for final negotiation.
Right. It's very interesting, your perspective on the situation in Syria, because other people would say, perhaps other analysts would say, that this is a Cold War being fought on Syrian soil at this point. Why do you think there is a shift, or that a shift has occurred in the dynamics of the situation? Why do you think now that Russia and the United States, from your point of view, have reached an agreement, but that the details of it are unclear?
Yes. You see, the world, after the collapse of the ex-URSS, early 1990s, you had a new world, a new what we call it balance of power. The unipole, America, the United States of America, was the only superpower. This lasted for 15 years.
Right.
It ended, from my own point of view, the unipole system in 2015. Now, yes, of course, America is a superpower, but it is no longer the only superpower on the ground. You have today Russia with China. You have now the emerging European alliance, which, when I speak about European, you have to exclude England.
Right.
England, this is the overseas branch of the United States administration. Right. No, I'm speaking about France and Germany. France is the military power, and Germany is the economic power. So now you have today what we call the European alliance. This is a superpower. So the world is shifting now. It is not a unipole world. And we see these changes now that they had forced the United States. Now they cannot fight all over the world. Their main focus actually is not the Middle East. It has shifted toward China, to Far East. So they have to get things, settled in the Middle East. They cannot be involved 100% in the Middle East. They are involved, but they have Israel, which handles the situation. So they are making arrangements. These arrangements to stabilize this area, it needs compromise with the other superpower.
Right, so do you think that the new area where the new war is going to be fought is the South China Sea?
Exactly.
Right.
This is a shift.
Right.
The center of struggle will shift automatically to China. Why? Because don't think that the United States of America, they consider the Arab world is their, rival, or there is no competition. But who is the real rival for the United States? The global governance project. Who faces it? It's China and Russia. China is the rising power. This is, in 5 years, China will be the strongest military force.
Right.
Today it's the number 2 in economics. After 5 years, they will be number 1 in economics. And they will be number 1 also in military force.
Right.
This is, the Americans are looking to this, headings. They want to pull out of the Middle East, but they want to leave a stable Middle East. Stable for whose sake? For Israel's sake.
Right.
They don't care about anything. They only care, why this is another issue,
right,
but they only care for the stability, the safety of Israel.
Let me take you back a step, because what you're saying is perhaps people would not comprehend it completely, but I'm wondering if you believe that in essence there was a conspiracy theory against Syria to break Syria up, and that was the main issue.
There were 4 Arab armies that were meant to be destroyed or dismantled.
Right.
The Egyptian army, the Iraqi army, the Syrian army, and the Algerian army. These are the only 4 armies in this area who are capable of making a difference.
Right.
Okay, today you have the Saudi military forces, but this is not an army who fought.
Right.
But these 4 armies, the plan, this master plan, it has, yes, of course, there is a conspiracy.
Okay.
People who doesn't want to believe that because they feel threatened by the reality. If you want to pretend not to be seeing what is around you, you are free to do that. But of course, these 4 armies were targeted.
Right.
The Arab world, it has to be divided into 72 cantons, small partitions. Yes, this is the new Middle East.
Right.
They did not hide their intentions when they spoke about the constructive chaos, and when they said about the new Middle East, they were blunt and frank, and nobody wanted, it is not their fault that we don't read, we don't follow, but their intentions,
right,
they were, published. So I'm not, analyzing, between the lines. No. It's a conspiracy. It's a conspiracy. Point final.
Okay. If we move on, though, or go back a step, because we're looking at what's happening in Aleppo today. You're saying that there is some sort of agreement that is being reached at some point. But why do you think the flare-up in Aleppo happened to start with?
Exactly. What is the position of Aleppo in all this fight? Aleppo is in the west-north of Syria. The countryside of Aleppo, it's a border with Turkey. All the ammunitions, all the arms, all the weapons, all the smuggling of terrorists, it goes through Aleppo. That's the main reason for this war in Aleppo. The Syrian state, the Syrian legitimacy, they have to control the inflow of this insurgents, this terrorists, this, weapons. They have to control it. The only way to control it is to control Aleppo. But this is a legitimate demand from the legitimate authority. This is what is, for me it's shocking. What do you want exactly? You want Bashar al-Assad not to control his borders? The man is in default because he is protecting his borders.
Right.
This is what is the agony, and we believe we are naive or what. No, Bashar al-Assad is not the cause of what is happening in Aleppo. Turkey and its alliances and its allies, they are making all this story exactly to prevent the government, the legitimate government of Damascus, to control the border with Syria, with Turkey.
Right.
This is it.
Right. But now that you say this, there is a ceasefire. It is for another 72 hours. Do you think it will hold?
Yes, what was intended before, I think the Turkish plan was they wanted to have a no-fly zone in this area with the borders with Turkey, where they can have camps for training terrorists or whatsoever. The idea of having this isolated zone or no-fly zone on the borders, it has been rejected.
Right.
It has been discussed. It has been the Turkish side insisted upon this strategy endorsed by the French, but at the end it could not be implemented. So I think now maybe there is a chance to reach a real truce, I mean ceasefire, which can be the ground of reasonable talks, I mean, to end this dilemma. What is the issue actually? What is the controversy actually? Is the interim stage or this transitional period, whether Bashar al-Assad should be a part of it or not a part of it.
Right.
This is the only, I think, controversial issue in their talks,
Right.
the main one.
Do you think Bashar al-Assad should be a part of it?
There are two things. I think personally that Bashar al-Assad, he knows and he is ready. And the idea is not shocking that at a certain stage, himself by person, he should leave.
Right.
But it cannot be superimposed by external powers or external countries. It has to be the decision of the Syrians in itself. Whether the Syrians are the pro-Bashar or the opposition, which I put between brackets, I mean, it's a Syrian decision.
Right.
But Bashar al-Assad, at a certain stage, he knows that he cannot continue. But at which point he should leave, it depends about the stability of the country. He should be here just for two reasons. First, to ensure the unity of Syria and not to dismantle the Syrian army and the Syrian institutions.
Right.
This is the role that is required from Bashar al-Assad. Not in, I mean, he is not meant for his own sake.
Right.
No, he is the guarantee for this stability. Once this stability is reached during the process of the transfer of power, he will leave. I mean, he is not stupid, but it should be the decision of the Syrians.
Right.
I mean, you cannot sit on the table and say, this is my decision as an American or Syrian or Russian. It cannot be this way.
Well, it took place in Iraq, it took place in Libya, and we saw it fail time and time again.
What do you have in Iraq?
Right.
The state, not the system, not the regime, the state fell. You don't have a state in Iraq. You don't have a state in Libya. Now you have in Libya militias. You have 3 states in Libya.
Right.
Superimposed. I mean, there is one legitimacy, it's the elected parliament, and 2 powers superimposed by America, France. In any case, you have in Libya, you don't have a state.
Right.
So
the,
you have
the theory of bringing down the dictator and then sort of superimposing, as you say, a government doesn't work, and we've seen that it doesn't work. But I'm wondering, if Bashar al-Assad does leave, who replaces him? You have a fractured opposition. Clearly, I don't think there's much of a political life or a political political bodies or political individuals in the country. So what happens the day after?
You see, I think the problem is not in the Bashar regime. It's in, I mean, let's say, for the sake of pride, false pride, of course, of arrogance, they want Bashar to leave, but not his system in a sense.
Right.
I think that the follower, he will be one of Bashar al-Assad elite.
Confidence, okay.
Because these people knows how to rule in a sense. Okay, there will be more democratic, the opposition will be more involved, the new constitution, of course, all this will happen. But it will, I mean, they do not reject the whole regime, they reject the person of Bashar al-Assad. And I think it is not because of bloodshed or anything, no, this is arrogance, this is we have conquered the Syrian will. It's a show of power, you know.
Some people would argue, to bring you another perspective, that Daesh, or some people say that Daesh was the making of the United States and its allies. But then some people would argue, well, why are they attacking Europe? Do you think that when you create a monster, it sort of comes at some point, becomes out of control and could attack you in turn? Or do you believe that that is a complete theory that should be null and void?
See, I will remind you a small thing. Who paid the price of the First and Second World War? Who?
Right, people.
Europe. The United States of America, except Pearl Harbor. They were far away. So, the Americans always, I'm not speculating, they did sacrifice Europe twice.
Right.
And who, I mean, took the rise? The United States of America. Who benefited from the First and Second War? America.
Right.
So, that's why you see today, Europe is concerned about not following, you know, blindly the United States. What happened in Ukraine, if you do remember, the Europeans, they realized that the Americans were pushing them to the NATO against Russia. So Merkel and Hollande, they sit with Putin and they reached, let's say, not understanding, yes, a kind of understanding. So, don't be shocked. Yes, I mean, the Americans, they sacrificed 4,000 Americans September 11 to go to Afghanistan and Iraq. The game is not as you think it's humane and it's human principles. No. Politics are very sad and are very
savage, if you will.
Yes. So yes, they did not lose control of Daesh, no, but they use Daesh for two purposes. Daesh has it serves, this is an American manufacture. Yes, it's black waters, I mean mercenaries, trained. Okay, there are some Arabs, of course. You know, like when you have a cake and you put some fruits on the Arabs are the fruits that you put on the cake. Right. But the cake, it's a black waters.
Right.
Okay. What is the purpose? First is to damage the image of Islam, to justify any action taken by Europe or America against the Muslim or Arab world. Okay. Even, you know, like they claim not all the Muslims are terrorists, this is a faction, but in the deep heart of the Europeans and the Western.
Well, we're definitely seeing it with Donald Trump and his popularity, that must be the main sentiment there, and the rise of neo-Nazi parties in Europe. Exactly.
That's what served, this is the first, what Daesh served, number one. The damaging on the Islam image in front. Even if they don't pronounce it, but deep in their hearts, the Western now, you know, they accept anything that happened to the Muslim world. They will not say it, second purpose of Daesh, it has what we call it functional targets in each country.
Right.
I mean, in Iraq it has a purpose, in Syria it has a purpose, in Libya it has a purpose, in Egypt, in Sinai.
And even in Europe it has a purpose.
Exactly.
Right.
So they did not went out of control. No, they serve an intelligence purpose.
Right.
We don't know, or the European community doesn't know, but they serve a certain purpose. This purpose can be bloody, yes. Martyrs can fall, yes. Explosions, whatever, yes, yes. All manipulated by their own services of intelligence, yes.
Right.
Don't be shocked. This is...
And just to wrap up our discussion, do you think there is hope for peace talks, the Geneva peace talks? Because as I understand, the international community does hope that the fighting and the fighting or the ceasefire can result in a continuation of the Geneva peace talks in Syria.
Whether through Geneva, whether through Berlin, whether through Paris, we hope that they will reach a consensus, a solution, a political solution for the bloody Syrian crisis. But I hope personally that this solution will be in the benefit, in the sake of the Syrian people.
Right, we all do. Thank you very much, Dr. Sharif Al-Dimandash, political analyst. It was a pleasure having you with us today. Ladies and gentlemen, that's all the time we have for this edition of Arab Affairs. Do join us again next week, same time, same place, with my colleague, hopefully, Monam Salhi. She will be joining you back then. From myself and all of us here, have a very good afternoon.